Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Embracing Youth Activism. My name is Carissa Rano and I'm with OJJDP's National Training Technical Assistance Center. As your technical host, I'd like a couple of minutes to discuss features of the Adobe Connect webinar platform and provide a few announcements to keep in mind. For those of you wishing to download a copy of the PowerPoint slides and other important documents, you may do so by locating the handouts pod directly above the chat area. Click on the name of the file and then click the download button. At the end of today's webinar, there will be a Q&A session where presenters will address some of the questions posed during the presentation. Please type your questions into the chat box as they arise. For those of you participating in today's webinar as a group, please take a minute and help us count. Go to the chat window and type in the total number of additional people in the room with you today. If you are viewing alone, there is no need to type anything into the chat pod at this time. At the conclusion of today's webinar, you'll be provided with a link to a brief survey about today's presentation. The feedback you provide is used to assist in future planning and training. Following today's webinar, attendees will be sent a certificate of attendance. The certificate is sent approximately 1 hour following the conclusion of the event and is sent via an Adobe Connect thank you email. Please keep an eye on your email for your certificate. And finally, this event will be archived in approximately 3 weeks on OJJDP's online university at www.ojjdpou.org, where you can also view past webinars. Again, thank you for joining us today. I will now turn it over to today's moderator, Vicki Eaglebear.
Hi everyone, this is actually Mary Kim Titla. I'm the Executive Director for United National Indian Tribal Youth, also known as UNITY. Vicki Eaglebear will join us in a few moments, but I just wanted to give a quick welcome and thank everyone for joining us in this important webinar. We have a great lineup of youth presenters, and we are super excited to hear what they all have to say. As in our traditional way in Indian country, we like to start off with a moment of reflection and prayer. And so I'd like to call on Vicki Eaglebear, who is going to serve as our moderator today, if she would offer a prayer, and then we'll properly introduce her following that. Vicki?
Tunkashila, Wakantanka, Tate Dopa, and Chimaka. Tunkashila, thank you for all of the love and blessings you have given all of us. I pray that you continue to watch over and protect our children and youth. Open their minds to endless possibilities and fill them with wisdom, knowledge, hope, and understanding. I pray that you keep them healthy and spiritually, emotionally, and physically whole. Tilamayaye, Mitakuyo Yasi.
Thank you so much for that prayer, Vicki. I appreciate that. And before we start our webinar, we'd like to ask a quick question. We have a poll question, and we'd like to know what your interpretation of youth activism is. So if you'll start marking which of the boxes best reflects youth activism. Youth engagement and community organizing for social change focuses more on issue-oriented activism than traditional partisan or electoral politics. Or youth activists can and do take their health and rights into their own hands, organizing activism efforts, lobbying policymakers, educating their peers, and taking leadership roles in the United States and around the world. And we have quite a few voting, and it's okay if you wish to change your vote. It looks like 77% or more are choosing all of the above. And thank you for participating. And actually, it is all of the above. Our youth activists do all of those things. They're quite busy and want to, take action so that they can make a difference in the world. So thank you for participating in our poll question. And now I'd like to formally and properly introduce our moderator, who is the director of the Sichangu Native Connections and also very active in or with the Sichangu Youth Council. And Vicki, if you could talk a little bit more about yourself, your background, and the work that you do, we'd like to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you for that. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Mary Kim and Unity for the invitation to be a part of this. Good afternoon. My name is Vicki Eaglebear. I come from the Sichangu Lakota on Rosebud Indian Reservation in South Dakota. I greet you all with a heartfelt handshake. I work with the Native Connections. It's a grant under SAMHSA that Sintek University just recently acquired. And so I'm going to be focusing my work on suicide prevention. But for the past few years, I've worked with youth that have been exposed to violence. And within the past 2 years, we developed the Sichangu Youth Council. And under that youth council were a lot of youth activities that were youth-led, and one of them being the Carlisle Indian Industrial School and the children that are still buried there. Our youth had played a huge part, and they were instrumental in getting that movement, which is now a national movement, on returning the remains of the children that are still buried there. Our youth also participate in social change on different levels on our reservation. And one of the most important is practicing traditional protocols and changing how we treat each other, basically teaching each other how to be good relatives. So with that, I just want to say today, we're going to be hearing from 4 amazing youth from across Indian country. They're going to share with us about their involvement with social justice work and grassroots efforts. They're also going to talk about what it took to become a youth activist, the issues that they're passionate about, opportunities that it has all led to, their plans for the future, and any advice they have for us as service providers, youth workers, and also for the youth themselves. We have 3 learning objectives for today's webinar. The first one is to learn why youth activism is on the rise and how it's making a difference in Indian country. The second one is to learn how to embrace youth activism as powerful agents for change. And the third learning objective is to learn how to transform young people's feelings of anger, sadness, and hopelessness into concrete actions that can make the world better. So those are the 3 learning objectives that we have. We have, I just want to introduce real quick the 4 presenters. We have Braden Sunny White, who is on the National Unity Council. He's the Northwest Regional Representative. We have Teresa Unali Baldwin. She is Inupiaq. She is one of the Unity's 25 under 25. She's also a White House Champions of Change youth representative, and she's also on the board of directors for NICWA. We have Nolan Pike, who is an Apache Stronghold Coalition member. And we have Journey Maniwaji Zephyr, who is the president of the Kauai Native Youth Council, the Rise Global Youth Council. He is the youth director of the Earth Guardians Kauai, and the Gen I Youth Ambassador. He's a CNA Youth Ambassador and the National Agriculture Ambassador. So with that, I will let Braden Sunny White share about his experience with youth activism.
Hello, am I coming through clear? Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear
Yeah,
you.
you're fine, Sunny.
Okay. Sego, Braden White, Dano, Lana, Gete, Waxkalewage, Wakuzasni Mohawk Nation. Hello, my name is Braden White. My traditional name is Lana Gete. It means he carries the bow and arrow upon his back. I am of the Bear Clan, and I'm from the Akwesasne Mohawk Nation. I'm also the Unity Northeastern Regional Representative, and I sit upon the National Unity Council. So what is activism? Many people seem to get this idea that to be an activist, you have to be out there, getting arrested, and it always has to be like, there's that media perception of what an activist is, and that isn't always necessarily true. What activism is actually defined as is the doctrine or practice of vigorous action or involvement as a means of achieving political or other goals. Which means that it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go get arrested or be violent as people seem to think that you have to be. An activist is someone who is fighting for a cause to achieve better results, such as better health care, funding, or environmental protection. Like a perfect example of an activist is like the ones that stand in rock. They're being nonviolent. They're standing their ground and they're making a change, and that's exactly what it should be like. That's a perfect form of activism, nonviolent, but still getting results. So how did I get started? Well, I've always been interested in taking a stand against the injustices in society in Indian country. And what really motivated me was way back when someone made a statement. We can make a change now and look back 20 years from now with pride, or we cannot take a stand and look back in 20 years with regret. And I always kept that in my head. And for me, like, that's the thing is people always want to say, like, they always say, well, I wish this would change. I really wish we could, see change in the community, see change in Indian country. And then when people say, like, well, why don't you do it? They always say, oh, well, not me. I want someone else to do it. So for me, like, I take it upon myself, like, if I want to see change, I'll do it myself because, it's exactly like the statement says. You can look back in 20 years with pride, or you can look back in 20 years with regret. And I'd rather look back 20 years from now with pride to say that, I helped plant that seed of change, and to see 20 years from now what that seed has become and, how it's sprouted into something great. So examples of my activism was I was invited to the 2015 White Hills Tribal Nations Conference. And I got to sit on a panel with myself and 3 amazing Native and Alaskan Native youth. And when I look at it, I look at all 4 of us as activists because we each spoke about an injustice that was true and affected our community and Indian country as a whole. Like, for example, Tatiana Tixner, she spoke about the racist Native American mascots and how that image relays onto our youth and how that gives us a negative image and makes us think that we're not equal to the rest. Like myself, I spoke about helping low-income Native American youth attend college. And then we also spoke about the suicide and destigmatizing suicide. Blossom Johnson, she spoke about helping get good housing for her home community, and she spoke about how in her community, like, they go to running water and electricity, and how, like, we live in the 21st century, but yet, like, there's still people out there living like that. And then we had Philip Douglas, who spoke about diabetes and how we need to curb that. So, like, if we really look at the definition of activism, we are all activists because we were using vigorous action and speaking out on a national stage to achieve these goals and, help curb diabetes or the racist mascots or helping get good housing for Blossom Johnson's community. We also spoke about the high rate of suicide in the Native American and Alaska Native communities. According to the CDC, suicide is the second leading cause of death for Native Americans ages 10 to 34, as well as the suicide rate among Native Americans and Alaska Natives is 1.5 times the national average. another example of activism that I was a part of was this past March. I had the opportunity to travel to Washington, D.C. And I got to participate on a youth panel that spoke with politicians, to speak with politicians. And I voiced my concern about keeping the Indian Child Welfare Act, or as it's called, ICWA, in place because of how important it is to keep Native American children in their nations and around their language and culture. And I have friends that have gone through the foster system, but because of ICWA, they've always been able to be close to their traditions and their language and their culture. And they look back now and they said, like, if it wasn't for ICWA, they don't know what they, like, where they'd be, because of like how strong your traditions of your culture is to your cultural identity, and how it's a huge part of Native American youth's life and identity. So you know, that was another form of activism. Was, you know, we got to speak out on this panel with these politicians to get these results and to, you know, prove that ICWA does need to stay in place. And thirdly, my third example of activism was in August 2016. I had the amazing honor and opportunity to once again travel to Washington, D.C. to greet and stand in solidarity with my brothers and sisters from the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, who are currently fighting the Dakota Access Pipeline. So, you know, this was a really great form of activism because it was a peaceful protest. You know, we stood in Lafayette Square, which is right outside the White House gates, and it was powerful because it showed unity and nation-to-nation relationships among, you know, like the Mohawks and the Standing Rocks and all the other tribes who showed up to demonstrate how we support one another in this fight, how we're all together, and how we're all in this fight together. And the amazing part too was we actually had people that were walking through because it was a beautiful sunny day, and they seen our signs and they started asking questions like, "Oh, what is the Dakota Access Pipeline? Like, tell us more about it." And then we had the opportunity to educate them upon, and they're like, "Wow!" And then like some of them even started grabbing our signs and marching with us, and like that was amazing. And you know, like I previously said many times, you know, that those peaceful protests are the best because, you know, like people are more open to it because they're like, you know, like they say the environment is very controlled, it's very good, and it's getting good points, and it's raising awareness as it did in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
It's great to hear about you taking the initiative to make positive changes in your community, Braden. And not only that, but taking advantage of opportunities to speak up against injustices happening throughout Indian country. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Teresa Unali Baldwin.
Unextralodek, everyone. Good afternoon. Ubinga Etiga Unalin Kikitagrikmi. My name is Teresa Unalin Baldwin. I'm NTTAC originally from Kotzebue, Alaska, but I am now located in Washington, D.C., where I am working for a national Native organization. And I'm a recent graduate from the University of California, San Diego, where I got a dual degree in psychology and sociology. So I'm really excited to be on this panel, so thank you for having me. I'm going to go right ahead. So how did I get started? I really saw issues in my own community that really mattered to me. You know, I grew up in a small rural Alaska community of only about 3,000 people above the Arctic Circle, and sometimes it was really hard to see other youth struggling and contemplating with suicide or having no access to mental health facilities and things that really bothered me as a young person. And I really asked, you know, what is already being done in our community and how can I improve that? Was the first question that really came to me when I had lost one of my own friends to suicide. And, you know, it was just that driving force of passion to be able to change the lives of my fellow youth and people around me. So I think after asking that question, I realized that there was already a lot being done in my own community about suicide prevention. You know, we have a walk out of a darkness every single year where our whole community, or a lot of people in our community, gather and we walk from one side of the town to the next. And, you know, we hold signs that really cheer on youth, and then there's now a youth group that does many activities around suicide prevention. So it's just really, activism is really being able to build off of one opportunity to the next. And that's what I kind of saw, like growing my own passion through suicide prevention. I'll talk a little bit about what I've done, but just these questions on the slide were really the ones that helped me structure how I saw activism. So what are, like I said, what are some things being done in your community, and how can you improve those, the work already being done? And also, how do these issues connect to other things being done in your community? So for me, suicide prevention, I was very passionate, I'm still very passionate about it, but I started seeing the connection between suicide prevention and climate change resiliency. And that is the fact that we as Native people rely on our land, and a large portion of Alaska is going to have to be relocated if there are funds because of climate change. A lot of there's a village going underwater right now. Houses are falling into the ocean, and so us as Native people relying on this land and having our ancestors and our people stay there for thousands of years can and is connected to our mental well-being as Native people. So I really saw those two interchangeably, and I really started becoming passionate more about climate change. So yeah, I'm going to keep going. So some of the examples of my own work, I won't spend too much time here, but if you have questions later, just let me know. For the state of Alaska, I helped structure a state law requiring teachers in the state to take a suicide prevention course. I became one of President Obama's champions of change in 2011. And just earlier this year, I traveled to Moscow to represent indigenous nations at the UN climate change about surrounding the Arctic. So the webinar is really about embracing youth activism. So I really wanted to spend more time on this slide talking about some things that I've learned along the way as a young person, speaking out and feeling really empowered by my own community to be able to make change. So one of the things that I really wanted to stress was to build your own support system. I cannot stress this enough. That's why I underlined it and did an exclamation mark, because I think that being able to build a support system and surrounding yourself with people that are also passionate about the same issue will not only further your own work, but you will be able to have a support system for self-care. I think that is very important, because sometimes a lot of this work is thankless. Not a lot of people will admire you and appreciate your work, but no one will ever tell you, yes, just build a support system. And the next one is read, write, and tell your story to as many people who will listen. You know, it was really hard for me to first speak out about suicide prevention or suicide in my own life. So writing it down really helped, and then being able to tell that story in other forms like reading and speaking out was something that really moved my own issue forward. And taking advantage of as many opportunities as you can. So for instance, you know, I'm speaking on this webinar right now. This is an opportunity that is helping me become, you know, a better person by speaking to almost 200 people on this line. So it's kind of nerve-wracking, but you know, you take these skills and you're able to use these skills in your issue area. And celebrate successes. Sometimes they're little successes, or sometimes they're big successes, like changing a law in Alaska to be able to have teachers take suicide prevention courses, because it is important. And the last, be proud of who you are, I think that's just said. But also to further your education, I cannot tell you how many opportunities had opened up once I got my undergraduate degree. And I was only one of 4 Native students at the UC San Diego out of 20,000 undergraduates that graduated this year. This is something that's, I think, very important when you want to become a youth advocate, because it will give you a stage and a presence among others. So I also really wanted to focus on this slide, which is one of my own my own Inupiaq values, is asking what is your responsibility to your tribe. We're all here because we have responsibilities to our tribe. And I just put a few of my own values in here, as well as some things that I know I see different youth becoming advocates for. So, cultural preservation, youth well-being, higher education, health. These are things that we all need in Indian country and rural Alaska Native communities. We always need teachers, doctors, lawyers in Indian country. So your dream is not limited to anything. So becoming an advocate for your issue area will not only help your community, but help the overall population of Indian country. And so, yeah, I just wanted to finish off with saying, keep your values within your mindset. Respect for land is one of my cultural values. Being open-minded, mindful, and present. These are the things that I always keep in mind before I go out and speak about my issue area, because it really helps center you. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I look forward to hearing some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. You're right. Our youth should take advantage of as many opportunities as possible. And thank you for reminding us of our responsibility to our tribes. Thank you. Next, we will hear from Nolan Pike.
Hello. So, Dagote, she Nolan Pike on there. She San Carlos Colonial. Shitijan Jamia Bansa Pike. My name is Nolan Pike. I am enrolled in the San Carlos Apache tribe, but I am Chiricahua Apache. How did I get started? I would like to say that I was raised with it. I always say that as Native people, our first breath is a resistance because we were a problem to this country. When the first time the colonizers in the United States wanted to come to this land, indigenous people were seen as a problem, and they wanted to, take us out so that they could continue to build our country. And my grandfather, Winston Ozu Sr., has always been involved, fighting for his people to protect Sisman Chasian, which is our sacred mountain, Mount Graham, and also to protect Chichilbashagotil, which is Oak Flat. And so as a young girl, I watched my grandfather go to many fights, many movements, and many protests, and at the time I couldn't understand. But all I knew was that as a young girl, that I was fighting for me to be who I am as an Apache. And being young, you wonder, why do you have to fight to be who you are? Why do people want to oppress you, discriminate you? And so as I got older, I began to understand. And that's how I started my travel and speaking to youth about being so proud of who they are, because as Indigenous people, we are resilient. As Indigenous people, our roots are still intact with this earth, with where we come from as Indigenous people. And so I traveled. I went to the Fight to Protect Oak Flat. We went on a caravan, which is from Arizona all the way to Washington, D.C. And ever since then, I have been to California. The only places I haven't been in our nation is the southeast. And so I am very, proud and honored to be able to speak here today. So the first thing I would want to say is thank you. I hope that each and every one of you have something to learn from this and take something, because these are all very influential people here that want to teach you, because we all are one people, and it is up to us as Indigenous people, because we are that rise. Through the fight to protect our land, water, and those that are yet to be born. Through history, our people have been fighting a generational fight. Fight against greed is the oldest evil in this world. Today, as young Native Americans in this nation, our voices are being heard. Young Indigenous people are taking a stand to protect water, to protect our lives, and to protect what our ancestors have fought for. So this fight has been continued. I have stories of my great-great-grandmother fighting. I have stories of my great-grandmother, being oppressed, but continuing her ways as being Indigenous. Then my grandfather still fighting the same fight that they have fought. My mother fighting it, and now I'm fighting it. So as Indigenous people, we see that this fight to protect land, to protect water, and to protect our identity as human beings, it's still continuing, and it's still here. So why I say my foundation as an Indigenous girl, as being Apache, was to protect my home, Mount Graham. It was Zishman Chasiyan. They wanted to put telescopes on top of our mountain, the Vatican and the University of Arizona, to see the stars and for the Vatican to find a physical being of God. So this was desecrating our land and our belief as Indigenous people. And what always questioned me was, how can someone want to find a physical being of God when you have faith? And as Indigenous people, our faith is so strong. So for our sacred and holy mountain to want to be destroyed so that they can find a physical being of God has always struck me. And so this fight to protect, and now that we have our sacred run every year, it really gave me my roots, that spiritual connection to wanting to fight for the land, to wanting to fight for who we are. And as Indigenous people, that's how it always has been. And that's why our youth are so strong today and now. And so it's not the fight just to protect Mount Graham, but also to protect Oak Flat against a mining corporation called Resolution Copper. Here you'll see that you have our elderly women, standing up, and even our generation today. And on the bottom, this picture is of us marching into Oak Flat when we first occupied. We've been occupying over a year. And on the bottom, you see a link that is to the ApacheStronghold.com, and that is where I come out of. And that is the organization that is trying to protect Oak Flat. So Resolution Copper is a mining corporation owned by mining giants BHP, Billiton, and Rio Tinto. They want to mine Oak Flat. It is to extract copper ore through a block cave mining technique, which will completely destroy Oak Flat. They will destroy one of the largest copper ores in the world, and the whole entire land will become a crater. So where I will be standing will no longer be there. And I always talk, as an Indigenous girl, my spirituality to the earth is strong, because Noble Sun, Mother Earth, we are her children. And she's able to give us the food and the water. And as a child, we're destroying our mother. And as a woman, that is destroying that is really disrespecting us, because we're able to bear children. So we're able to have that connection, just as Mother Earth, and we are her children. So our spiritual connection is what is something that has brought our movement and many movements, and that unification. Up here you see David Archambault and my grandfather Winslow Nosey hugging. It is that unification as each and every one of us seeing each other as brothers and sisters, not looking at each other from different tribes, but looking at each other as one people, one fight, one issue. Because there are many issues going on here. We can talk about the Loop 202, MODOK. We're fighting to protect MODOK. We're fighting to protect Mauna Kea. We're fighting to protect Standing Rock, and, against the Cold Access Pipeline. So many places, Chaco Canyon, the confluence for the Deneb, against many mines, fracking in Colorado, so many places. So this continuance of fighting to protect our identity and our land has always been here. And today we are still living that history, that we're still living the history that has been brought upon our people when the colonizers first stepped onto our land. And that is why I say that it is up to us. It is up to us to make that stand. It is up to you. And you are already making that stand by listening to what we have to say, by unifying and wanting to learn and educate yourself. And as being a young Indigenous girl, it makes me proud and it makes me feel so honored because throughout my time I have been able to meet so many different influential youth like Chutes Scott Martinez, like Danny Grassroot, like Bobby Jean, and like Frank Vaughn. Each and every one of them have their own different issue from a different place in this nation. But we all come together speaking about the same truth and speaking about how we need to unify, how our spiritual connection is strong and what is leading our people. And we can make that lead. You can make that lead. And I know that you can make a difference. I can make a difference. But it makes it even stronger if we can all make a difference. To unify as brothers and sisters. And I say this from my heart because I see that if one tribe was to fight one fight, it makes it different when all tribes are able to fight one fight. As we go to the next one, and then the next one. Because when you see all the lands that are going to be desecrated by corporations, by the government, that will contaminate our water, destroy our holy places, where we go to pray, where we're able to keep our roots as Indigenous people and our spiritual connection, there's little pinpoints everywhere on the map. And those are lands that could be destroyed. So those are the lands that we need to protect, because without our land and our water, who are we as Indigenous people? Who are we as human beings? We will no longer be here on this earth. And that is why I say as we as Indigenous people, as our Indigenous voices are strong, can make a difference. As brothers and sisters, we can make a difference. Because you are strong in your own community to educate yourselves on where you come from and the land that you live on, and to realize the issues that are going on around you and to be able to make that stand, because you can make that stand. One time, it could be an essay at school, speaking to someone on social media, because the web is really what is pushing this fight too. And our spiritual connection, I cannot stress upon you how strong the spiritual connection, and to know the land and the people and know who you are inside. Because that is what will push you through this fight. That is what pushes me through this fight, because I can get tired. So I want to thank you all for hearing what I have to say, and I hope that you learned something out of this. But yes, so thank you. Yeah, Sean.
Wow, thank you. You're very inspiring. I'm glad you talked about spirituality. I also grew up watching my dad fight for environmental and cultural rights. So along with spirituality, those are what motivate my work with youth today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to our last presenter. This is Journey Maniwaji Zephyr. I will let him take over.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here and to share ideas with you today. Thank you to Unity for bringing us all together here. My name is Journey Maniwaji Zephyr. I'm 16 years old and a member of the Incan Sioux Tribe. I am president and founder of the Kauai Native Youth Council and youth director for Earth Guardians Kauai. I founded both of those groups after attending the Lighthouse Tribal Youth Gathering last year. Connecting with so many Native youth councils inspired me to go back to my community and bring Native youth together into our own council. I'm on the Rise Global Youth Council and a Jedi Youth Ambassador, National Ag Ambassador, and Youth Ambassador for Center of the Native American Youth. Just to share a little about me, as I said, I've grown up strong in my culture, while also growing up in Hawaiian culture in Kauai. This combination of cultural influence gives me a pretty interesting perspective. The Hawaiian nation has always been strong in the protection of the Aina here, that which feeds us, and I come from a long ancestral line of Dakota and Lakota warriors and chiefs. To say I have feathers in my hair and flowers on my shoulder. I'm grateful to be here with all of you today, and thank you. for some really great information on the environmental issues our island is facing here in Hawaii, I recommend watching the documentary Aina, That Which Feeds Us. One of the things that I learned this summer when teaching workshops on environmental activism and direct action with other Native youth is that many of us have a kind of negative association with the word activist in our minds. Activism was also kind of portrayed in a negative way in society. It's important to recognize that it's a form of colonization, a way to keep people oppressed, disempowered, and feeling almost shameful around speaking up or taking action. A few things to think about when decolonizing activism is that the word environmental activism and activists are often portrayed in negative light in modern media and society that discourages speaking up. Indigenous people have always been active in speaking for Mother Earth and future generations. This is who we are, and we are strong and empowered. We are the original activists. Let's reframe activists in our mind and mean active in culture, active in our ancestral legacy of protecting Mother Earth and future generations. We decolonize activism in our communities by refusing to allow shame or fear to silence their voices. Activism is a tool for powerful change. I mentioned Bill 2491 being one of the first major issues I became involved with. 2491 created pesticide-free buffer zones around schools, hospitals, and homes, and required disclosure of what chemicals are being tested. We had to battle the world's biggest chemical companies, Monsanto, Syngenta, DuPont, Dow, and so on, to get the bill passed. I felt like our generation had the right to be heard on this issue. These pesticides impact children's health more than adults. The major issue I'm working on right now is climate change justice. I am one of 21 youth suing the federal government and fossil fuel industry for violating our constitutional rights and the rights of future generations on climate change. The federal government and the fossil fuel industry is known for over 50 years that burning fossil fuels creates emissions that cause climate change, and yet they choose to promote and expand the industry for immediate profits. Whereas the price would be paid not in their lifetime, but by my own generation and the future generations who have to deal with catastrophic climate change. Ways you can get involved in environmental action and justice. Be involved, speak up on local and national legislation, identify issues in your community that you are passionate about, identify solutions for them, ask what to do. Organize friends and other youth through your youth council or form a new environmental working group. Form a coalition of organizations that support your cause. Create a video or viral social media campaign for your action. Plan each step of your action from start to reaching your goal. Educate yourself on the issues. A lawyer if you need one. Pull in support from legal help if needed that work in environmental justice. Know your rights, treaty laws, and UN Declaration on Indigenous Rights. It's important to be involved locally and nationally, legislation and lawmaking too. Know your tribal or county council, know your state officials, keep a list to write or call on issues, educate yourself on issues that are important to you, do as much as you can, make sure you follow your agendas of tribal council and also state legislation. Testify in person or by letter if you see environmental resolutions / legislation. If you are shy or an introvert, don't let that stop you from being an activist or environmental leader. Most effective environmental leaders are not always the extroverts. Being a good leader requires you to listen and observe well, the gifts of introverts. We have to be able to step out of our comfort zone for Mother Earth and future generations. It's not about us. Practice public speaking every chance you get. You don't have to be great at social skills or conversation to be a powerful speaker and inspire change. I'm an introvert, so I use writing as a tool to reach out more to people. Find your gifts. We're all the seventh generation, protectors from Mother Earth. We all know that we came into this life to aware and awake of what needs to be changed in the world. That's why we're here, to be the change. All over the planet, youth are leading environmental and social justice movements to create powerful actions and protect sacred sites and resources for future generations. We must rise above the idea that adults will do this. If they are going to do it, they would have done it already. It's up to us. That's why our generation is here. We choose to be here now. I believe in you. I believe in us. Let's do this.
Wow, wow, you're doing some amazing work, Journey. And I just want to say that as a member of the OJJDP, which I know you are a member as well, and with me practicing Wotakuye, or the kinship, I just want to say that I'm very proud of you and your work. And I know it's going to bring a lot of, and it already is bringing a lot of change, so thank you for that. And also thank you for the ways to get involved. I'm sure a lot of the participants that work with youth will find that beneficial. So thank you for that. I want to say a thank you to Journey, Nalin, Teresa, and Braylon. You all are helping to ignite a culture of activism in youth. And I just want to remind you before we start in with the Q&A that you are not tomorrow's leaders, you are today's leaders. And there are a lot of us who are very proud of all of you. So thank you for that. So the last 10, 12 minutes, I'm going to grab some of these questions and we'll get some of them answered. So the first question we have is, how do you use social media to promote your work?
I can answer that. This is Teresa. I can say that, yeah, social media can either make or break your work. I know in my own experiences, I do use social media a lot by promoting my own ideas and how I feel about certain issues. And, you know, I do get like a lot of encouragement from my social media friends, but I'm also saying like youth should keep in mind also that nothing can be erased, but also you are having a worldly audience see what you're posting. So I do use social media to where I usually write long posts about how I feel about a certain issue, and I think it's great. That's another one of my things that I pointed out was just to read, write, and do as much research as you can about the issue that you feel most passionate about, and I think social media is one of those tools that can advance your work as well.
I agree with you. It does, and it can be used that way. It has its benefits, so thank you for that. Our next question, this one's to any of the presenters. Do you have any advice to people working with youth for encouraging youth activism?
I can answer that question. So I'll repeat it. To any one of the presenters, do you have any advice to people working with youth for encouraging youth activism? I think, you know, I always like to go back to our spiritual connection. it could just be praying, starting off very small, knowing the things that, what you learn, in your culture and your identity. And even if it's not even for someone that is indigenous, just to have that spiritual connection to know that everything is alive. My inspiration and what motivates me is my two younger sisters, Nijoni and Bonse, because I look at them and I look at all the children, the small young children, and what world are they going to grow up to be in? And what future children that I will have, what world will they grow into? So that always, motivates me and pushes me to make this world a better place, for those that are yet to be born, because the world that we live in today is not a great world. It's not a bright world. We're living in a struggle of oppression and discrimination, and we're having to worry about if we'll have clean water within the next 5 years. And some people in this country don't even have clean water now. They don't have water at all. So those things that we have to educate ourselves, and it's to just be outspoken and to stand up, even if it's through art, through poetry, through rapping, through, graffiti art, through speaking, through being, writing essays within your schools and your classes, on social media. All those things work. They make a difference. So anything that you can do, even just by acknowledging or praying to those, everyone says if you can't be there, pray, because you'll be there in spirit. So those things that you can learn, and you can be able to stand up and make that rise, because there's many different ways to stand up. There's many different ways for each and every one of us to have our voice be heard, and it's through that.
Thank you. This next question is for Journey or Braden. Why do you think the world needs to listen to the youth voice?
I'll answer that. One way that I think that the world should listen to youth is that a lot of the time youth are very observant or attentive to what's going on around them. As you know, when a small child, newly born, the first thing they see is their parents. They observe their parents, what they do, how they speak, where they're looking, and how they interact with other people. That's how we learn. And because we're observant like that, we see a lot of the problems and the bad things that shouldn't be happening, really. And as you grow older, I guess you sort of lose that ability to be that attentive or observant in a way. Not that I'm saying that adults can't be attentive or observant in current problems around the world. It's just that you sort of have an edge in that because we're closer to it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Our next question is, what do your peers have to say about you being a youth advocate? And how are you described by your peers and the adults around you?
Braden, do you want to answer the question? Okay, well, I can just jump in. I would say a lot of my peers definitely support me, and I think that's one of the biggest motivators for me, is to see that I am being supported by my other fellow youth, and being able to, just feed off of their energy to be able to do more, I think is what really drives me every day, to be able to say, like, my responsibility to my tribe is to go out there and tell my story one more time, or even if it is really hard, because I know telling my story can help someone else. And I think that's one of another thing that I would like to stress is that youth should also uplift each other's work, and because we're all focusing on different issues, and I think it's really important to support each other. So with that said, I do think that my fellow youth definitely support me.
Thank you. I think we have time for a couple more questions. This next one is for you, Nellen. Do you have any, or actually this question is for any of you. Do any of you work with non-Indigenous activist youth or groups? If so, in what ways?
Throughout the fight, to protect Oak Flat, and, even in Standing Rock, being there, or in many Indigenous fights, you have a lot of non-Indigenous people that want to help. And it's always good to be welcoming, because they're helping us. And in a way, that is why we say we got to unify as brothers and sisters. And if we look at them different as they looked at us once before, we're doing the same exact thing. So for me, it's always to see them as, and see each and every one of us as one people. And through that some tribes may have protocols where some people can't be able to do certain things, and that should always be okay and understanding, because that is not, our land or where we come from. That's their territory. But to have non-Indigenous people come in and say that they want to help, it's always good to let them come in with open arms, because no matter what, in every way, it could be on social media that they're helping. It could be them calling their leaders, congressmen, senators, even the president, or certain things they want to help. It could be donating, in those certain ways, or just being there. Because being there can make a difference, to have the people come together and to share stories around the fire, to stand on the front lines, because they are there. When you see a protest, even if it's just an Indigenous, fight or movement, it's not, because you see many people of many colors standing together as one to protect and to fight for one issue. So it's always good to be open-minded, and to always have, that open heart, to know that we all are in this fight together. We're all in this fight to protect Noble Sun, Mother Earth, because in the end, we're all human beings, and we're all children of her.
That's right. Thank you so much for that, Nolan. This last question will be for Journey. Let me see here. With all the work you continuously take on, how do you address self-care in order to continue your journey?
I'd say that it's more of a balance, really. In terms of self-care and doing the things that I do, sometimes it's okay to just take a little break here and there. Like, you can still continue with your work and all, but if you put too much on yourself, it can really put a big strain on you. And continuing to, I guess, strain yourself with too much work like that and really affect you in negative ways. So I'd say just balance yourself. Try to find a balance between what you can do and what you want to do.
I like that, finding the balance. Thank you for that. That would help me also as a service provider. I want to thank all 4 of you. You all are amazing. I applaud you. The way that our systems are failing right now falls hardest on the heads of young people. And you all basically said, you know what, I'm not going to wait around, I'm going to do something. And you stand up and you do it. And thank you for that. And one final thing, you all are the leaders that your ancestors dreamed of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vicki, and thank you, Mary Kim, and thank you to all of our presenters for a great discussion on this topic. We have just a few brief reminders. This webinar will be archived on OJDP's online university in approximately 3 weeks. For more information about this training, feel free to contact the United National Indian Tribal Youth, also recognized as Unity. And to contact OJJDP or NTTAC and the Help Desk, please find contact information on this slide. And on this slide, for your reference, is OJJDP's disclaimer. And lastly, we would appreciate if you could please take 5 minutes to complete the feedback survey. And thank you again for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everyone. That concludes our webinar for today.